think we're about ready. So I call this meeting to order at 5:31. All right, on to roll call attendance. Aubrey, Bjorn, Brandon, me, Deanna, Greg, Jess, Joey, Josh, Lacey, Messina, Sean, Terry, and Zoe. And Eunice may or may not be out. We will see. All right, can I entertain a motion to approve the minutes today? Or the agenda, excuse me.
Yeah, so moved.
Moved by Brandon, any second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Bjorn. And for non-committee members, please do not vote in this. A motion passed. Can I entertain a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Messina, and any second?
Second.
Seconded by Brandon. And motion passes. All right, on to reports. I don't believe I have anything to report for this week, so I'll just move on to Brandon.
Yeah, there's no report from ASCW either. I just want you to know, like, the survey is coming to a close. Definitely push people to respond to it if they like to still. It's open for students. They most likely won't get one of the rewards since we've had a lot of responses, but it's always good to hear student feedback about the current S&A or service and activities over the last 4 years, you know, whether they've used them, if they're satisfied by them, and if they truly deem them essential to the student experience. Their voice will go a very long way because this week my team and I are creating kind of the Power BI dashboards to, you know, wrap up and bring to you all next week. So, you know, we definitely want to make sure every student voice is heard. So yeah, with that, I yield my time to Joey and Lacey.
I'll jump in just two quick things in advance. One, the usual update to presenters if you haven't attended before or watched the videos. I will kind of keep track of time since you have 10 minutes to present. I'll give you in the chat, I'll give you a 2-minute warning when we get close, and then a 1 minute as we get close to that. The other two, one is committee members. You will, after tonight's meeting, Aubrey's going to send out a survey via email. Make sure to take time to look at it. This is the survey you all need to make sure you complete before we get to deliberation next Wednesday. This is where we're going to have every one of the base funding request units in there, and then those 4 categories of your recommendation to fully fund as requested, fund but at a lower amount than requested, fund at some level if possible, or do not fund, and then there'll be ability for comments. We'll kind of have a deadline before Wednesday, so that way we can pull all that data together to present it and frame for deliberations going forward. So definitely after tonight, this is the last night of funding requests. Please make sure to set some time aside to go through, look at your notes, and do that, because that will definitely help with the deliberation as we come up. The other part is we did send out the doodle poll to members. Thank you, everyone who's able to go and fill out for available times for that additional deliberation time, because we will need more time than the 2.5 hours next week. And so the time that ended up coming forward, and Aubrey has got it set up for us as well with Frank, is going to be the extra time, and we'll send out an invite to the committee. Is going to be Saturday, March 13th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Hopefully we don't need to use that whole time, but in the event that we do, that's what we have set aside for the committee. So Aubrey will send that out, but that is the time that we had the majority of people who were going to be available. And that'll likely be the end of our deliberation, so it is really important to be there for that chunk and to make the recommendations at the end and to vote on that. So with that, I'll pass it over to Lacey.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share our Power BI tool for tonight. Like Joey mentioned, this is our last night of presentations for this year. And so as you can see, we do not have any new funding, at least for tonight. And here are the financials over the last 6 years, and including the requests that we have going forward. Does anybody have any questions about the groups that are going to be presenting tonight? Okay, great. Well, then I'll kick it back to Christian.
I'm actually going to jump in here real quick with another update about deliberations next week. So I'm going to share my screen here. For the committee, in our Teams dashboard, if you go up to files, we've compiled files specifically for the deliberation. So if you click here, every request has its own folder, and it contains all of the minutes, the presentation materials, any emails or any other communications that we've received will be in each folder. So you can see here, it has the request, the minutes, the presentation, the supplemental questions email with those attachments, and then this one had a thank you email with that attachment. So each group has that, and it may be helpful for your review before you fill out the survey or as we're going into deliberations.
And thank you, Aubrey, for pulling all that together to make the rest of our lives easy for the committee.
Yeah,
It's all nice and set up there and great. So make sure you use it as you're filling out the survey. And I know we're all going to be in it during deliberation as well, but thank you, Aubrey.
Happy to help.
Yeah, thanks, Aubrey. And with that, let's move on to communications received. Do you have any this week?
We do, and I will go through, and we have 3 of them. Let me pull them up real quick. And so some of these are ones that are just coming up, and then we have one from last week. And so the first one I'll read is from Wildcat Sports Radio Network specifically. And so there were 2 questions, and I'll read the questions and the answers. And again, Aubrey will send these out to you all afterwards as well. But additional question for the Wildcat Sports Radio Network: could funding for student travel be found somewhere else on campus, for example, CWU or the athletics department? Their response: this budget has not been primarily used for travel anymore in the same way it was originally proposed to be. Initially, it was to cover expenses to cover both home and away games for football and men's and women's basketball, both the equipment, student wages, and in the cases of away games travel. However, we decided to shift and focus on using our funds to cover more sports and primarily home contests, an expansion from the 3 sports covered when we first started this program. We stopped traveling but picked up coverage of several other sports. It allowed more students to cover specific areas of interest and made it more accessible for those with many commitments who would not take the time to travel potentially states away for days at a time. So the amount spent on travel costs is substantially reduced now. The funding for travel itself could, I guess, be sought from other sources if needed, but is far from the primary use of the budget. The next question on here: if funding was allocated elsewhere, would the Wildcat Sports Radio Network program continue operation, i.e., would another funded department adopt it and continue it with their funding? Their response: I certainly would not want to let the program cease to exist, as it has resulted in several career placements for graduated students and valuable experience. But if it were to have to be reabsorbed into the main budget of KCWU, it would have to potentially result in the cutting of a different area internally. The funding being allocated elsewhere would just be a loss in opportunity from one area to another. The next communication we received, as I pull it up, was in response to questions from the Virtual Analytics Lab. And so there's a couple questions on here. The first one: will this be a fully student-ran extracurricular program? Their response: yes, the activities of Finance Club, Accounting Club, and the activities related to the Council of Investment are fully student-ran extracurricular activities. The next question: how is WRDS different than other large data mining softwares such as SQL and R? Their response: WRDS is not a software program, but a portal that will help students to use data related to finance, accounting, environment, social issues, and governance. We subscribe to databases, financial data, environment, social issues, etc. And this portal connects those databases. So students on the West Side and in Ellensburg can get access to these data and work from different sites together on these topics. This will help students to connect and work on joint projects. Furthermore, WRDS provides some internal tools that help students to accomplish and develop their investment decisions and proposals. So students in political science, economics, finance, accounting, et cetera, can work in groups and prepare proposals for sustainable investments. Next question. Why not pursue the Tech Fee Council for funding if this is campus-wide program and non-academic? The mission of this service appears to align closely to their mission. Their response, we focus on extracurricular activities. The next question, I see that you have secured funding from Library and College of Business. What other funding sources have you explored? Have you requested funding through the student tech fee? If not, why? Their response, we're looking for additional funding and we'll probably receive funding in the future, but we need to start. Base funding would help us to get going. This is extremely important for us. As soon as we have the lab established, potential donors can see the relevance of our activities. This will be a showcase for students to get a job. Next question, is this an ongoing expense? How long is the contract for the services? Meaning if there isn't enough engagement or usage from students, will there be an opportunity to not renew for another year? Their response, the WRDS subscription is annual. We're asking funding now in order to get started. As soon as we have this established, we will look for other resources, donors, et cetera. But at this moment, we need to start, otherwise it will not happen. And last question, you mentioned that this is an investment for the university. How does the foundation office, which is the primary university funding investing arm, involved in this proposal? Their response, the foundation helped us with funding one of our primary databases, so they are on board. And then added in here, our new CWU president mentioned that sustainability and EDI will get the highest priority in the next few years. This proposal will help students do activities in these areas. A couple of days ago, some science students approached Tony regarding palm oil. What is the problem? Goes into some examples that are not relevant to the question on here, but that this funding would be absolutely relevant and beneficial for these high priorities for the university. And then the last one we have is from last week. I'll pull it up. And this is in response to the Wellness Center Path Advocate. And so we had two questions. One, the first question, have you looked into contracting out for services instead of paying for a full-time employee? Their response, short answer, yes, and it hasn't worked out with our local domestic violence, sexual assault advocacy organization, Aspen. Long answer, we are completely open to and will continue pursuing partnerships that allow us to best serve students while being responsible stewards of our funding. Aspen has not been responsive or able to complete contract negotiations, which have been offered 3 times in the last 5 years. Most recently, CWU requested contracted services in July 2020 to continue our services following staff vacancy. Aspen has not yet provided an updated contract or MOU. For more considerations about student-centered campus advocacy via partnerships with external agencies, I found this useful and provided a WICSAP publication, which will be attached in the email. Additionally, I'm most interested in improving the response and access of support services and measures for survivors. Here are my concerns about exclusively contracting services for this position. A, limited in connection to campus services, simplified because of how Aspen is funded, there are limitations on how, where, and when they can fully dedicate their time to remain accredited as a community domestic violence agency. A person in the full-time role has expanded ability to meet with campus and community resources, develop relationships, and design practices and protocols that better serve students. Survivor support is multifaceted. The individual funded by S&A will develop partnerships across registrar services, housing, disability services, case management, financial aid, counseling, and more to quickly resource students who have survived experiences of interpersonal violence. They also serve on a community coordinated response coalition that includes members from Aspen, local police, our prosecutor's office, child services, Ellensburg schools, and more. Aspen currently cannot dedicate an FTE staff member who can perform direct service advocacy work as well as community engagement and resources. And B, prevention education. The scope of this position as it is currently designed is unique in having both survivor-centered direct service advocacy and broad education, consent, bystander intervention, et cetera, requirements. It can be difficult to find and hire individuals who possess training, experiences, and skills in both of these areas. Aspen does not currently focus on broad public health education initiatives, and it is unlikely they would be able to offer staff who meet the minimum requirements for this dual type position. Were our office able to continue contract MOU conversations with Aspen, it is likely that we would contract for either a full or part-time advocate who exclusively offered sexual assault response services to CW students, in-person and remote. The Wellness Center would still need to pursue funding to hire a dedicated violence prevention health promotion coordinator educator. And then the last question, can you please share the information that states this position is required in order to be in compliance? I would like to see the fines associated with being out of compliance. The response, Title IX addresses sexual harassment and sexual assault as part of that continuum on campus. It requires that schools know or should have known about harassment and assault to respond promptly and effectively. The school must take immediate action to eliminate the harassment, prevent its reoccurrence, and address its effects. How Path Advocate addresses these requirements, and there are 3 bullet points. 1 is prevent the reoccurrence by specialized education to high-risk groups from the Path Advocate. 2, address its effects. The Path Advocate survivor-centered meeting and resources, recommendations for policy changes, and interactions with campus organizations. And 3rd, prompt response, 24/7 hotline response. We're working on this. Path Advocate can accompany students for reporting. Additional requirements on here is the Jean Cleary Act, which requires universities to, among other things, notify survivors of options to report to law enforcement, access counseling services, ability to change academic and living situations. The Path Advocate addresses these requirements by their ability to meet confidentially with survivors to review all items and options within the Cleary requirements. And then via VAWA 2013, the Campus Save Act, which is an update to the Cleary Act that adds university responsibility to protect victims' confidentiality and requires offering training programs to all students and employees on an introductory and ongoing basis about primary prevention and awareness of rape, domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. The Path Advocate addresses these requirements as the requirements for careful training of responsible personnel is more easily achieved with a dedicated, experienced public health professional, the Path Advocate, embedded within the institution who can design, implement, and evaluate primary education and training efforts. The penalties and fines, well, there is a case-by-case consideration for violations of these requirements. The worst case scenario would be to lose all federal funding. This is extreme and not levied against any school to date. More commonly, schools pay damages and legal fees in lawsuits. Just a few examples: University of Colorado paid $2.5 million in damages to 2 complainants. ASU paid $850,000. University of Rochester settled at $9.4 million. University of Connecticut, $1.3 million. University of Tennessee, $2.48 million. And those are all of the communications we have received.
Thank you, Joey. And now on to public comment. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, let's move on to the presentations today. The first one that I see is the scheduling services, excuse me, and that's with Sherry Wilson. Whenever you're ready.
You're muted, Sherry. We can see the screen though.
It would help if I unmuted. Okay, thank you all for letting me come at the end of the presentations. I was lucky enough to be at the beginning of the presentations. And today I'm talking about scheduling services, and it should be a pretty short presentation. So let's get started. Okay. There we go. So who are we? Scheduling Services provides reservation and resource management for all non-academic activities occurring on campus. This includes meetings, workshops, conferences, and of course, all of our events that we have on campus. I do want to point out that it's for all non-academic events occurring all over campus, not just in the CERC. Many times people just think that we schedule the CERC, but that's actually not the truth. We schedule all the academic space as well, as long as it's non-course credited. So we're conveniently located in the heart of campus, which is the Student Union and Recreation Center. So historically, this budget, many years ago, they wanted to create a one-stop shop for scheduling purposes. And so what they did is they brought in all the people that would be using the scheduling services area and said, hey, can you contribute to have this one-stop shop? So S&A has historically, for the last, oh gosh, probably 15 years, has put in $30,000 of a flat fee that has not increased in about 15 years. The state side puts in about 72,000 a year, and then the conference program puts in about 15,000 a year. We also receive about 10% service charge for off-campus groups that are utilizing our services as well. And so combining all of those funds is what creates our budget. Our budget this year remains the same. We did not increase it for the next quadrennial. And the $30,000 helps to pay for a portion of one of the staff's salaries. So staffing wise, we have 2 full-time staff, and we employ 1 to 2 student scheduling assistants that sit at the front desk to help answer questions. So this is just a glance. It's actually a low number because this did not give us the full picture as far as a full year because of COVID. So just as an example, that year, last year we scheduled 15,000 reservations, and of that, 2,200 were for S&A funded areas. Normally, we bring in about 22,000 a year that we schedule, and the number of S&A events is usually between 5,000 and 6,000. So you can see the numbers are a little low. So how did scheduling adapt during COVID? One of the things that they were able to do is they created a virtual space in 25 Live, which is the scheduling software that we utilize. And by creating that virtual space, that automatically uploads to the university events calendar. So we were able to share with students what type of events were out there, even though we were doing them virtually. We also have been able to partner with student involvement to incorporate 25 Live into Presence software, which allows our clubs to request meeting room space through the Presence software, which has been fantastic. So clubs can actually schedule day or night, or request day or night for space on campus. And then I think this is probably the biggest one is we've worked really closely with the county and the state guidelines for the roadmap to recovery on scheduling space and educating the campus community on the parameters of utilizing space on campus during this COVID pandemic. So that is it. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Brandon, I see your hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Cherie. I guess just wondering, like, if funding was to be like cut by 15%, where would the other like funding sources that like scheduling center would pursue? And if not, like, what would be the impact of like a 15% cut?
A 15% cut for this budget would be pretty substantial because it is a pretty small budget. And we actually we're going to need to supplement the budget this next quadrennial, most likely with sub-fee money because the cost hasn't gone up in quite some time. So if we were to have to cut back the 15%, it would most likely mean positions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions? All right. If you guys think of any later, we can always just email Sherry and we'll get an answer later. Thank you, Sherry, for your presentation tonight. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have homecoming, and that is with Robbie Gunnan.
Hi all, give me just a sec while I also share my screen. And I had let Joey know ahead of time, but just so you all know, I am going to present on homecoming and campus activities in one presentation, and I'm not requesting any additional time or to combine the time. I think I can cover it all in one. So let me get my presentation going here. Okay, so thank you again for your time this evening. I know you guys have been through a lot of presentations, so I wanted to show you all what we've been doing within the campus activities and homecoming. I report directly to Cherie as the director of the student union and offer programming for all CWU students. Whether it's, as you can see, this is our mission statement for campus activities. The biggest thing being that we develop programs by students for students. So that is our main focus in order to keep campus activities and students engaged here on campus. So homecoming has traditionally been S&A funded. Like Cherie said, it's probably been 10 to 15 years. S&A decided that they wanted to help assist homecoming so that we could bring bigger acts and names to CWU. So S&A has traditionally funded us with $47,888. And while that is a generous amount and helps us get lots of, lets us do lots of things with our homecoming budget, we do, in order to supplement that, we do sell tickets to our major productions, such as a homecoming comedian, which is a traditional annual event that's been happening on campus probably for close to 30 years. As many of you know, entertainers are expensive. And so that $47,000 gets us a foot in the door, but it doesn't all cover the costs of not only the entertainer, the technological requirements, the space requirements, safety and security, those types of things. So we want to make sure, so we put tickets on sale that we offer usually to students first at a discounted rate. And then once we have had tickets on sale for a while, we would traditionally allow CWU staff, faculty in the community to purchase tickets. We do always reach out to students for input. So a lot of times what I'll do is reach out to our agent. We have two that we work with, two companies, Parsons Company out of Northern California and Deggy Entertainment out of Florida, and they provide us with the list of artists who are currently on a show or wanting to book a show, and they provide us a list. We work within the budget we believe we can sell, and then we put a student survey out to receive input. So we make a decision. As you can see, these are just some of our previous homecoming performers. We get student input, and then we make an offer. This process takes place probably 9 months at the latest ahead of time, because as you can imagine, entertainers do book out quickly, and people can, entertainment and comedians can gain popularity really fast, which makes their price go up. So I will tell you, and Cherie and Jenna can attest to, I do negotiate. I try for every dollar to make sure we get as far as we possibly can with every dollar, and then in turn can offer the students a discounted rate. So homecoming funds a comedian, but it's also a week-long activities in which we collaborate with student government for Wellington's wildfire. We also work with alumni and have for many years to try and bring students or bring alumni back to campus and interact with current students. We also work with recreation and RHA for the Student Talent Showcase, which is a traditional event we've had on campus for many years. I want to reiterate the fact that the cost for an artist is expensive, and then that is just their fee. But we also have to pay for technology such as lighting and sound and speakers. Many artists come with what they call a technical writer, which is a fun wish list for them to ask to make sure their performance is the best and they're giving off their best effort. We will work with them on making sure we can provide those accommodations to make sure their show is the best for everybody as well. So that is homecoming, and I am going to transition over to campus activities. And so campus activities has also traditionally been funded by S&A, and in fiscal year 22, it will be in the amount of $202,238. And that helps with programming over 200 programs yearly and it is 8 student employees. So they are the student programmers that come with the ideas. They're the ones that do the work the day of, leading up to, as well as are hearing, engaging with other students on trying to make sure we're offering programs that students would like to attend. And I want to also mention that the assistant director job, my position, is not funded by S&A, but by the sub fee. So I just want to make sure that you all know that the S&A fee does go directly to student employees and then also directly to student programming. I'm just here to help support them and do the paperwork. Our programming is free to all CWU students. That is a big, has been a goal of mine, is to ensure that all of our programming is free to students, no matter what the program is. Homecoming is the exception because of the cost of it, but for all of our normal programming, just some examples you can see here on the screen, is free for CW students, all CW students, no matter the location. And we do offer virtual programming a lot now with the pandemic, and have been able to outreach to West Side centers and other students as well. I hire 8 student programmers. We continually are looking for students who are actively engaged and also wanting to be leaders, because I believe that our student programmers are leaders on campus. They are interacting with students. They're trying to plan events that students want to attend, that are providing that fun, engaging out of the classroom experience. We do collect a small amount of revenue each year, and that revenue is for attending, tickets. Let me start again, I apologize. For ticket entrances for non-CW students. So if a family member, if a community member wants to bring their students to Monday Movie Madness, we charge a small fee of $5, and that allows us to allow the community onto campus as well. And it does give us a few $1,000s in revenue. It's not very much, but it makes sure that we can get the students in first, and then followed by community members who would like to attend our on-campus programming, and that we're being good community partners. I want to point out that Campus Activities is collaborative. We collaborate with a lot of clubs, departments, and organizations on campus, no matter the event. I would say that the pandemic has brought us closer together as a programming collective, and we are working harder and harder to make sure that we're outreaching and making sure that the programs that we're putting on are meaningful and getting students engaged in a multitude of ways. Some of the larger programs we collaborate on that I could not do without our partners on campus is Wildcat Welcome Weekend, of course, Family Weekend, Student Appreciation, and Homecoming Week. We also do small programming. These are just a few examples of the smaller programs that we've been offering, collaborating with during the pandemic. So trivia nights with recreation, we've been partnering with Parade of Nations to offer a specific trivia. We also have the Publicity Center do all of our publications, advertising, video. KCWU does our radio announcements promoting our events. And that's really important because the Publicity Center is student designers, student writers, those types of things. So students working with students to put events on for students. I know Cherie just showed a snippet of this, but just to show you that we had over 14,000 attendees at our programs in fiscal year 2019 to 20, and that we executed 33 contracts, which are contracts for artists, contracts to hire companies in to provide activities, things like that. So that is inclusive of online activities during the pandemic. I want to share with you all how we've adapted during COVID, because I think it's pretty impressive. We have worked with the Student Union Operations team to create a virtual studio space, which has allowed for students to perform. We've also done make and take events, which have been very successful for students to come and pick up a packet of materials and take it back and then share later. And we've worked with the community to do community events such as Booth Central, which was a longstanding tradition. Small group activities, 10 or less per the requirements, and then outdoor activities as well. Excuse me. And our funding request is going to remain the same for both budgets to continue to employ 8 student programs, continue programming over 200 events and activities. Homecoming would remain the same as well. Brandon will ask me, what will I do if there's a reduction? And I will tell Brandon that we would have to cut that large scale programming that those big annual traditional events, and that smaller programs means less student employees needed. And last but not least, just want to let you know what we're forward thinking. We're so excited to go back to our post-pandemic world with all the fun activities for fall, with outdoor programming, pandemic pods. You all can see we painted circles on the lawns in the fall to allow for outdoor engagement. And we're going to continue taking student input. The last note I will make before I finish is that we have been pioneering with student engagement for presence. So we are data tracking our students, which is an awesome opportunity for us to be able to provide data back to you all on how many students are attending, the diversity of the students attending, and whether on campus, off campus. It also gives us a way to try to work out further engagement opportunities for those students we may not be reaching out to. And that is it. I finished right in time. I welcome questions.
Yeah, I see Bjorn's hand up, and then let's go to Terry next, and then Brandon.
Yep. How do you usually reach out to students? Like, I'm assuming flyers have something to do with it, but I'm guessing that's changed a lot in the pandemic environment.
Yeah, traditionally we did paper advertisements, whether posters in the building, we posted in the residence halls, and we put sandwich boards up around campus. But we really are utilizing those social media platforms right now with the pandemic, of course. So outreaching via CWU Hype as well as CWU campus activities to make sure students know that we're still planning activities, we're still hoping they're engaged, and we have had quite the following. Our Instagram has gotten, I think it's like 2,700 likes and has grown rapidly with the pandemic.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And Terry, you had a question?
Thank you. I was wondering how many of your student employees are either from the West Side or online students? And then how many of your activities are oriented towards West Side or online students?
Sure. I will tell you that currently none of my students are West Side students or online students. And that was because we're down to just 6 student programmers at the moment. I wanted to really focus when COVID hit to try to keep the current students I have employed. And we were able to do that by continuing to offer virtual programming. Now, I will also say that we do partner each year. We do outreach with Michelle and her campus activities team on the West Side to make sure that West Side students know that they're more than welcome and encouraged to come to our programming. And then also with the virtual program, it's been far easier for us to outreach and share ideas amongst virtual platforms to the West Side students.
All right, then Brandon, and then we'll go to Greg.
Yeah. So I guess like mine, Robbie, I think we know just like a very like common like I guess statement going around right now. It's just like the online modality like prevents a lot of people from engaging with like CWU activities. I was just kind of wondering like how did campus activities adapt this year, and like were those like new events successful? I mean, relatively to like engaging that incoming freshman class of I don't even know like 700. I don't know how big our freshman class was, but like how well did we do like engaging with those students?
I would say with the conditions, I think we did pretty well. We continued to offer those traditional programs such as Monday Movie Madness, concerts we did via Instagram so that anybody who was following us, whether they were here in Ellensburg or abroad, could participate. The make and take events, I have to say, have been super successful, whether it was plant your own succulent or create your own creature. We did a Valentine's Day soiree event where we provided cookie decorating kits for students on campus as they were coming to grab dinner. So I would say that it has definitely allowed us to evolve. And the plan would be to continue offering those virtual programmings now that we've seen that there are students engaging from other campuses, that as we move forward, we'll continue to offer those virtual engagement opportunities along with the in-person programming.
Sweet. Thank you.
And then Greg had a question.
Hello. So and maybe this might be for Lacey, and I think I've asked this before, but I'm old and forgetful. But you have some fairly large ending fund balances. And I believe that those, you have to request those don't carry forward. And then also, and now it's too late, but scheduling has a huge negative fund balance too, which we didn't see. I don't, what happens with all that?
Well, I will jump in. As for the scheduling fund balance, there has been some adjustments after those reports have been made. And so as of right now, we are projecting to basically come to zero for scheduling. But if you look at their financials, they have been dipping into their fund balance in order to maintain their operation, which is kind of what Cherie was highlighting about being supplemented from different funding sources. So that one's probably a little bit more complicated. But as far as homecoming and campus activities is concerned, if there is no request from Robbie to keep that funding, it will automatically roll back to the S&A supplemental budget.
Right on. Thank you. And Robbie, so, you know, I'm thinking like what Brandon asked, but how, you know, as far as reaching out to, you know, we've got 10,000 students, right? Or something like that. And, you know, I know those down the road for me in engineering, they just hide out in Vogue Hall. They don't get out. They don't see sandwich boards. They're not real. They don't know anything about social media. Are you doing mass emailing to students in some way? Or is that, you know, how do you grab a student like that?
Well, no, we traditionally don't do mass emails. To be honest, I think that the programming might just get a little lost in all of the importance of the emails that CWU sends out for students to know and acknowledge. We do use platforms such as Involvio as well as Presence, which students coming into CWU, new incoming students, have been introduced to Involvio. So there is a calendaring feature where students can express interest about events or see what's upcoming, as well as Presence. So it does, as Cherie mentioned, connect to the university event calendar. So there's two different platforms that students could get on and see information about that also has more important information like how do I register for classes or where is Black Hall? So it's inclusive of all of the important information students would need to know as they're transitioning into CWU. I believe it's also included in Central 101 and Central 301 for incoming and new transfer students. And we have a great relationship also with the Transfer Student Center, and that has been growing with their expansion as well, so that we continue to outreach to transfer students who are new but not traditional here on campus.
Aha, good to know. And as a University 101 instructor, I don't know about any of these things to share with my students, so I'd like to know more about it too then. But, you know, that could be my fault too. Anyway, thanks.
I guess I would just add that we did at the beginning of the school year, Greg, we mailed out welcome packets to all of our freshman students, incoming students, and we were able to put in and highlight what events were happening for fall quarter. So we did reach out to them since we didn't get to have an orientation in that way as well.
And if I may just add one last quick thing for the question on the fund balance, honestly, it's because we can't get everybody together. And a lot of that money goes to those big annual events where we get 3,000 students. And just because we weren't able to make that happen this year is the reason why the fund balance. But Lacey can attest, I try to use every dollar for student engagement as I possibly can.
Oh, I know. And you're not alone. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, I think S&A is going to see some money coming back in so that we will have more to give away this year for the next 4 years too, right? So that'll be a good thing.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
And I believe we have about time for one more question, roughly. So any more questions? All right, seeing none. If you guys think of any later, just email and we'll get a response eventually. Thank you, Robbie, for coming out. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
All right, up next, we have the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement, and we have Andre Dickerson presenting today.
Absolutely. So I have some amazing colleagues with me who are going to be presenting, and so we will have them share the screen. Joey, feel free to let us know when you would like for us to begin.
Whenever you all are ready, Andre.
Okay, well, my name is Andre Dickerson. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I serve as the director for the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Middleton. I serve as the Student Engagement Coordinator, and my pronouns are he, him, his, or my name.
And hello, everyone. My name is Amber Hofer. My pronouns are she and her, and I am an interim program manager here in the CLCE. All right, so jumping in, this is kind of a big picture overview, but we wanted to take a minute to really thank you all for having us tonight. And so we know we're covering a lot of information, so we did send a supplemental handout, and so feel free to refer to that. All of this information should be in there as well. All right, so who are we? I'm not going to read all of this out, but really our work centers around creating unique student experiences centered on individual development, retention, and persistence for all CWU students. Really, when it comes to like the vision and mission, one of our students captured it really well when they said, we connect students to the greater community and provide opportunities for personal, professional, and community development. We want students to feel connected to something bigger than themselves, and we want our community to not feel just like another college town. So we really center a lot of our programs and services on that sentiment. This is our organization chart. So these are the folks who bring a lot of our programs and services to life. This is also on the second page of the handout. If you see on here, everyone on this org chart is funded through the CLCE allocation, with the exception of the folks in purple, which is Michael Middleton and his students. And so we're incredibly lucky to have Michael Middleton. If you haven't heard, our offices have merged. And so we're excited to have him, but his position and his students' positions are not funded through the CLCE allocation.
So as we transition to our signature programs, we offer a broad range of activities, programs, and events that are true extracurricular activities designed to engage students and help their experience here build a sense of connectedness, sense of belonging, and support their overall transition to the university. The first program we're going to talk about is Experience Leadership Project, most commonly referred to as ELP. This is a prior to classes beginning 4-day leadership retreat with that intention exactly, helping the students transition through connecting with staff, faculty, and peers as they become aware of the campus resources that we provide. We have a chart that we put in front of, put before you that outlines the number of students engaged as well as their retention and the average GPA that we're really proud of, the history, and that it showcased a positive impact on those students. The next program we're going to be talking about is Wildcat Leadership Academy, a program that we got a chance to establish in fall 2018, responding to the student need for a tangible certificate that would be focusing on professional, personal, and academic development. We're so grateful to be able to get this started, coming off of a transition and the foundation work laid by CLA and the Human Resources Department with their leadership program. Since then, we've engaged over 700 students, and it's one of our really great programs we've been able to continue to maintain throughout the pandemic. Next program we want to talk about is the Cross-Cultural Leadership Program, or referred to as CCLP. This program has been going for the last 8 years, and it has about 10 students each year that engage in a deep dive into the connection between leadership and culture. And so the purpose of it is for the students to engage in the rich curriculum and share their own personal experiences as we look to grow global leaders. One really great thing that's unique about this and how it varies from the others is it's a cohort-based model. And the students are together all year long, and their time together ends with a cultural immersion experience. Some of the locations you see on the screen there are where they have visited. And so, yeah, we are grateful to be able to offer these varieties of programs. Now, the other side of the house of CLC is the community engagement. As Amber mentioned, our goal is to help connect our students with a greater sense of purpose as they contribute and add value to our community. So as we go into the next slide, you'll see we average about 900, oftentimes close to 1,000 students engaging in volunteering and service within our community often earning over 5,000 hours. What's unique about the CLCE also is we serve as the primary contract administrators to the memorandums of understanding and community partnerships that allow for these students to engage with the community and make sure that all of the appropriate liabilities and protections are there, as well as just the agreements, so that we can have unique opportunities like a Yakima River cleanup, a blood drive, and things of that nature. We are deeply, deeply honored to have that service and that volunteering be directly connected to the Duncan Family Scholarship. This scholarship has been in existence going on its 14th year, and we average $4,000 to $5,000 in scholarships that we get a chance to manage and award through our center. We're absolutely honored and grateful, as this is one of our endowed partners, in addition to a leadership endowed partner, which is Dr. David Wayne Kuhn.
So we do want to take a moment. Everything that we do is for our students, but we want to honor the students who work in our office. And so these students in these photos, and a handful more, have really taken the time to bring all of the programs and services to actually contribute to social change, innovation, and those engaging student experiences. And so even while we've been short on professional staff, our students have really stepped up and created these powerful programs for the CWU community. And so you can see more of their quotes, but we wanted to have their voice be part of this conversation because we genuinely couldn't do the work that we do without them. So moving forward, we have a couple primary challenges that we face over the past couple of years. The first one is connected to professional staff turnover. So for the past year, it's been just Andre and myself executing the programs and functions of our office. And so these staff changes have really challenged us in the delivery of our services and the implementation of new ideas, which is one of the many reasons why we're appreciative of our student staff. So we hope to launch searches for those vacancies within the hopefully next couple months, but it's been a significant challenge. The second challenge that we faced that we want to talk about is COVID, which everyone in this space has. Welcome to the virtual presentation. But we wanted to highlight a couple things that we did in our response to the pandemic. As we were transitioning to all of the virtual platforms, we were able to maintain all of our student staff and find meaningful ways that they could still do their jobs and positions and facilitate peer-to-peer led programs. And so we've been challenged to create a lot of our in-person experiences into virtual programs, but there's been a lot of positive things that have come from it. So for example, our Giving Tree experience has become virtual. That is with Amazon Wishlist. Our Evening of Recognition is virtual. We've had Wildcat Leadership Academy sessions that are also virtual and more. And so a lot of these virtual programs really allowed us to engage students in a new way. And I think that it also let us engage the students at our university centers in a new way. Within the pandemic, it's been a journey, and we've had the opportunity to develop some new programs as well. And so we've launched our Word to the Wildcat podcast series, which features students, faculty, and staff. We have the CLCE Leadership Institute, which served as a virtual transition program in place of ELP, where we served incoming students. And we've launched our presence organization, allowing the extent of our students, or allowing us to extend to other students or across campus and move our liability form online, which was a big win. And so we've also had virtual volunteering experiences with the Adult Activity Center, International Cafe, and more. And so long story short, we've learned a lot with the pandemic, and we'll actually continue doing a lot of these practices in the future to be efficient.
So looking forward, the units of the Interclub Association and the CLCE are combining as previously stated. In moving together, we're striving to revamp the leadership, service, and club engagement experience here at CWU over the next quadrennium. To do so, we're really going to be focusing on some research-based and industry best practice decision-making for our strategic planning of our office. Another big focus is going to be expanding and deepening the supports for our students overall, as well as their leadership development. And we also want to deepen our connection with the faculty and staff on campus to broaden our cohesive student development offerings as an office. And as a little bit of a taste of what we're looking at, we want to show you this case study. So we don't have time to walk you all through this comprehensively, but this is in your handouts that were provided to you. And you're able to see what we're projecting our combination to look like in the future. It's going to include experiences that have already happened, such as ELP and the ability to create a club, as well as some new things that we're kind of working on putting together for next year and the years to come.
So as we transition to our budget request, I think it's important for us to share and showcase that we are not asking for an increase. Our budget request allocations for $528,000, $528,976. You see kind of the budget breakdown between our student payroll, our professional staff payroll, and our goods and services in anticipation of articulating what we would do in response to a 15% decrease potentially. As we go into the next slide, you'll see we will have to address the goods and services allocation that we would have available. Our intention would be to not cut a single student staff or professional staff as we move forward, and we would continue to work collaboratively. But I think Robbie said it best. We would have to be very, very critical in not offering the larger scale programs in their quality that we may be used to, such as a Yakima River cleanup program that would engage almost 500 students in service and traveling to about 15 to 20 sites. We would have to find ways to be more resourceful in how we do things. And it would just change the type of programming, is oftentimes the quality, especially with such a large hit, like close to 80,000 of the 116 that we would have allocated toward goods and services. So I believe that that's our last slide. And so we can go to questions.
I see Brandon's hand up.
Yeah, what's up, Andre? I guess I'm gonna have like a similar question, just kind of like to campus activities. Like we know like a big complaint from our students is just like they don't feel like they've been like engaging with campus, like whether it's campus activities or kind of CLC. So kind of wondering like how did the department adapt? You know, were those adaptations like successful? And like how did we really like adapt, you know, that incoming freshman class where they never really stepped foot on campus?
Absolutely. It absolutely was a challenge. I'm grateful. As Amber mentioned, the team created a leadership institute immediately and did intentional outreach to the incoming first-year students. And we did work directly with University 101 faculty to promote those opportunities to those students. That was one of the first things that we did. And we did do mass emails, as well as, thankfully, we had the benefit of utilizing presence. So we have made just about every effort possible, social media, working with University 101 faculty and professors, as well as intentional emailing, working with orientation and others to get the word out. And I would say we wish that we would have had more engagement. The students who were engaged, they absolutely benefited from the programming, absolutely benefited and gave us amazing feedback on the quality of the delivery. And we're just going to continue the efforts. We recognize that we've learned some really, really great strategies for outreach in this market and in this climate that we're absolutely going to continue to employ with the desire to be able to connect with students in person as well as go into the fall. But I would say that the students who were engaged, it wasn't in high volume. Like we mentioned, the ELP itself averages anywhere between 130 to 165 students that we get a chance to connect with, which oftentimes can be 10% of the incoming first-year class, just in ELP itself. This time around, our leadership institutes collectively, because we offered them every quarter, we probably got a third of that number of students. And so while we thankfully have other offerings like the Wildcat Leadership Academy, that we offer several workshops every single quarter, it was different. And so it's absolutely not the same level of volume. However, thankfully, the quality of service, or at least the quality of the programs, what we've received in our data and what the responses have been, was that it was meaningful, it was engaging, and it helped them build a sense of connectedness to the campus.
Word. Thank you.
And Terry also has her hand up.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Could you tell me how many online or West Side students you have employed? And then in addition to that, how many of, the programs I saw, ELP, CCLP, the Chavez King type program that you have, how many of those students are online or West Side students?
Absolutely. We have 0 West Side or online students employed. However, through the engaging with West Side and online students, we're in a little bit of a unique position where we, again, with Robbie, we work very closely with Michelle. So we engage with West Side students and make programs available to them very often. Earlier in the quadrennium, we've bussed students over from the West Side to campus for our leadership conferences. We have also had staff visit the West Side almost once a quarter to offer workshops and presentations to West Side students. The challenge is I couldn't speak exactly to the online students because many of the online students utilize the services of West Side Student Life. So we would often have students who were online students come to presentations or engage in events. I couldn't speak to that, but we have 0 staff. All of our staff are Ellensburg students that have either been traditional students or transfer students. And then, sorry, Terry, what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, so you answered this, the staff one was fine. And I think you actually answered both parts. I was just trying to get number of staff, students on your payroll, and then the activities and things that you have that are available for online or West Side students. So there are any of the online or West Side students, for instance, in the CCLP or the Chavez King?
Great question. No. Now, they have engaged in the Wildcat Leadership Academy, and there has been several conversations about establishing similar cohorts as well as a specific ELP offering for West Side students. That has been in conversation for the last several years and potentially had the ability to manifest within the last 2 years, as Michelle has also experienced staff turnover. And so that's been really challenging in that respect as well. But they have not been a part of CCLP or Chavez King. They have absolutely been a part of programs like Wildcat Leadership Academy. And they're absolutely connected to, thankfully, in our respect now, we have clubs. They have specific clubs that are connected to ICA and that we connect with also.
I saw Sean hands first, and then we'll go to Bjorn after.
Andre, how are we doing? So it's actually a question regarding I think the CCLP that you talked about. Clearly during COVID, that probably makes it difficult to send students. So how are you, and I know it's hard to forecast, but what are you trying to forecast in anticipation of the CCLP, moving into this next quadrennium? You're hoping to get back to normal. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but could you talk about what that would look like?
Absolutely. And, including some of our board members on this call, our students were prepared. We were taking a group of 10 students to South Africa in the spring of 2020. And we had our entire itinerary. Our student raised over $35,000 to be able to go on the trip. And we literally had to cancel 1 week prior after everyone had their passports, itineraries. And it was very, very challenging, very devastating, because this is a program that students have benefited from significantly. And so what our goal will be is we are literally in that process now of looking at how do we restructure. And I kind of mentioned in the presentation, is an average about 10 students that have engaged in that program. We think we have an opportunity to expand that and work with Westside and others as well to be able to benefit from it. So it's been really tough, and I want to be mindful and respectful, because Brandon was one of our CCLP students this year, and he worked really, really hard to raise the money. And we've since then connected with the students, have gotten feedback from as many of them that were willing to share. And what we're going to do is we're going to respond and find different ways. One thing that we were working on, Sean, is there are domestic travel. We've done things domestically, so we've gone to New Orleans and things like that. But one of the first things we discussed was, can we do things more domestic within the Pacific Northwest that still had that cultural component? Even something as simple as going to Roslyn and connecting with the Craven family, which are amazing folks who've most recently been recognized, who are alumni to the university, and the family, myself and many others have great relationships with. So we're going to look at how do we navigate more locally, more statewide, and even within the Pacific Northwest region, if we recognize that transportation such as traveling on a plane or even especially traveling internationally is not there. But I'm so grateful because we have staff such as Amber, who's leading that program going into the next year, who has a lot of experience in similar offerings. So we're working on it. We're working on it.
Okay. And I believe we have time for about one more question. So go ahead, Bjorn.
Yeah, I was at ELP 2019, and I sort of remember filling out a survey at the end. But what kind of ways do you? I'm sorry if this was in the presentation already, but what kind of ways do you measure student engagement?
Absolutely. So we have satisfaction surveys. And my colleagues can speak to this as well, but we're in the process of continuing on. We have satisfaction surveys that we get back, like you mentioned, at the end of ELP that we have you all fill out in terms of your experience there. We try to follow up either in the fall or end of the year as a response to, but those Lacquer scales are very, very helpful, and getting a chance to understand what has been your level of engagement, how beneficial has it done. And one of the other areas that you see is we track the retention. So ELP is one that we've absolutely consistently tracked the retention of. Are our students being retained at a higher level, and other indicators such as grade point average, in addition to the satisfaction survey data that we get back. But Amber also is going to be leading that program as we go. And she's working very, very diligently on not just taking the ELP for the 4 days, but how do we build out a year-long model where you get a chance to come back and connect throughout the academic year, and we get a chance to build a stronger relationship with each student individually. And so, unfortunately, the pandemic's messed a lot of things up. And so we had a lot of these things that were planned, including Wildcat Leadership Academy and the different levels of that we were working on. And so for the sake of, if my colleagues would like to add anything to those questions, I want to make sure I can yield at least the next minute for you to do that.
That's all good. I'll add one thing to the how do we measure engagement. I think that it is evolving. But so for ELP, we've defined the learning outcomes. And so what we've done with some of our virtual programs like the Leadership Institute is we've measured the experience based on the learning outcomes and then asked students to prove it. So using a Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree, like how have you demonstrated leadership? And then we say, okay, what does that actually mean to you to demonstrate their learning? And so I think it's evolving, and we're doing our best to kind of create some consistent standards.
All right, thank you so much.
And with that, that's all the time we have for questions. If you can think of any more, we can email them later. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We appreciate your time.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
All right. Finally, we have the Office of Student Involvement, and that is with Paula Moffett and Jenna Hyatt.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Can anyone confirm that they can see the presentation at this time? That's
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful. And so, Joey, do I have the green light to get it going? Okay, start the time. Well, first of all, thank you all very much for this opportunity to present to you as the S&A Committee this evening and as part of this fiscal governance process. My name is Jenna Hyatt, and I serve as the Associate Dean for Student Living and the Interim Executive Director for Student Involvement, and I use she and her pronouns.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Middleton, Student Engagement Coordinator supporting the Office of Student Involvement, and my pronouns are he, him, his, or my name.
In order to capture the information pertinent to this S&A-based funding request, we have scaled our discussion with primary focus on the overall scope of student involvement and examples of clubs and organizations while addressing these areas listed above for this conversation. So To begin, this S&A-based funding request is in support of the Office of Student Involvement, which specifically is to fund 2 FTE staff and 3 student staff focused on student engagement, and includes some goods and services funded by S&A. Specifically, these student hours are committed to 3 student staff working roughly 16 to 19 hours during the academic year and in adapted hours in the summer. These student staff are solely dedicated to the clubs and organization administration functions with Michael Middleton. The student involvement budget, as shown here, is $148,801 invested annually from S&A and has a blended fund with and support from sub-fee of $201,000. Student involvement is that overarching administrative oversight and support of the departments and organization in which I want to highlight next. So the timing of presenting last in this year's cycle of S&A-based funding presentation is positioned so well. And the reason is the scope of student involvement is the total of all of these 11 areas that you have thus far witnessed through this entire quarter's process of S&A-based funding presentations. Student involvement exists to serve all students and specifically has responsibilities that include the overall management, supervision, the fiscal responsibilities, development, and more importantly, in coordination of all of these listed departments while also having the privilege of advising ASCWU. The 2 full-time staff are Paula Moffitt, our Secretary Supervisor, and myself currently serving as Interim Executive Director of Student Involvement. Now, Paula's role is paramount for student involvement. Her position is to focus on the administrative support as it relates to such areas as ASCW student officers for details such as contracts, pre-approvals, coordination with hiring, payroll, and all sorts of all the employees under student government, and more importantly, supporting the how to within the system of the university to accomplish the initiatives and goals of the executive board. Now, while it's important for universities to tell their story, we believe it's as important for each student to be able to tell their story. Engagement is more important now more than ever, given the pandemic and the exercise of restrictions of in-person engagement, of which has been illuminated very well this evening and throughout this quarter through the requests. We know how vital it is for students to find a strong relationship to the university, and where they engage and how they engage is really critical. Whether it be through events, programs, and initiatives, students really need to have experiences that support them through their social and psychosocial development to find comfort, to imprint, and find their fit at the university. Now, students leading students shows up in many ways, and that is our priority in student involvement. In student involvement, this shows up with ASCW board and with student staff that are funded in this area as they support Michael Middleton's primary role with student engagement clubs and organizations. These students support how the clubs and organizations can accomplish the types of events, the club priorities, and the travel, to name a few. These students under student involvement, they have created the systems to make it seamless. This matters because the time spent developing club leaders is not burdened proportionally on the how to get through this university system to accomplish their goals for their club mission, but on the way, on the why the student involvement is happening with their members to be really a part of something that they believe in together, and to more importantly have these shared experiences and persist in finding ways to plug into the university with common interests. Students leading students is really the goal of student involvement. Let me pass this to Michael next to dig a bit deeper into the sophisticated program and services that he oversees with these students and student involvement.
Thank you. As Dr. Hyatt mentioned, we have 3 student positions directly in support of the Interclub Association that are funded in this ask. Currently, 1 student position, the events and travel position, shout out to Brandon who helped pioneer it, remains vacant to be filled this spring quarter for next academic year. Each position is taking on high-level work in support of our ICA Club experience. Our students help to manage our presence software, which is new to campus, help walk clubs through the process of hosting events, getting travel leader trained, conducting new club orientation, processing ICA funding requests, and creating our weekly newsletter correspondence. We actually have 2 clips from our 2 current staff members, Joe and Samantha, prepared for you all as well today.
And really being employed. As student involvement, I think I've seen a lot of the inner workings and reasons to support these clubs even more. It seems like even other departments like the CLCE and even the CERC building management really want to see clubs succeed. And that's kind of what we're all here for. And we can't really do much in the classroom. So really anything outside of that, we've just seen so much positivity with students, and they've really, really appreciated the new and kind of more organized support that they've got.
Being employed at student involvement has also just been this hugely beneficial experience for me. I've been able to be a part of impacting those programs and impacting the way that we approach clubs here at Central, and being able to take my experience from being in clubs and then applying that to then make.
Wonderful. So shifting gears really quick, I want to briefly touch on the metrics that all of the areas in student involvement and hopefully one day all of campus can have access to. So there are 3 areas I want to highlight in our new campus management software called Presence. The first is attendance tracking. So every event or program registered in the system has built-in check-in capabilities. And on the back end, we can track the trends of attendance to see what program has been working and what may need to be rethought. The second area that I want to highlight is the co-curricular transcript and skill development area. So we have the ability over the next 4 years to create tracks of engagement for students that they can follow to earn certain competencies, experiences, or skills that we outline and identify. Students will be able to see what they need to do to earn these up front and track their process along the way via their personal profiles. Ultimately, the students will be able to leave with a full transcript of all of their out of the classroom experiences to go along with their academic transcripts. And lastly, I want to highlight the demographic capabilities of the system. So we are currently integrating the demographic data pulled from our registrar's office and other areas on campus. This data is all aggregate, meaning that no identifying information can be traced back to an individual student. It just shows us the trends of involvement. So what this will allow us to do is to see if we are really truly impacting holistically the students that we want to impact. For example, if we see a lot of engagement with first-year students, but not a lot of engagement with our juniors or seniors, then we know that we have some work to do to better connect those students to the opportunities available to them. And with that, I want to turn it back to Dr. Hyatt to discuss our plan if we needed to reduce our budget.
Thank you. As listed, the approach we will take to reduce our budget will include these areas listed, such as increased efficiencies with goods and services, supplies, and collaboration with other funding sources. I want to speak now to what we've learned. You've definitely heard quite a bit from the many areas under student involvement, even as of this evening. But I want to highlight just a few of those ways we've adapted in this virtual engagement environment, a few examples. One thing that I want to just mention is that we've really shown up as a student involvement team and collaborated across the campus, and whether it be adapting space within the student union into classroom space like the ballroom, or handing out facial coverings to the campus and community at the information desk. And I know Cherie may have mentioned that, but that's just one of the examples. Very specifically, student involvement, Presence itself levels and increases inclusivity for students to find each other and engage students. And during even before the pandemic but during the pandemic, as you can see from what Michael just shared, it has created a leveling of students and access. Now, how we contribute to retention and students. Well, Destination 2025 is the university's strategic enrollment plan, and many of the areas within student involvement do have specific objectives towards goals of the future of the university. For example, a metric of the university for this plan related to retaining students is the engagement of co-curricular club involvement, and is noted specifically in the plan. So in short, this request is sustained support at 43% of our budget for the next 4 years, with an annual request of $148,801. In addition, student involvement currently oversees 37% or $2.7 million of the previous quadrennial funding of S&A allocations through multiple departments, which overall includes 31 FTE and 150 student staff. Given this type of investment of our students, the oversight is very important to us, and thus this request is to sustain that support. So thank you very much for this opportunity to present to you this evening. We have students and staff within student involvement here this evening and are here to witness to the multiple ways we partner as well. Do you have any questions for us?
Any questions?
Paula Moffitt is here as well. I know she was mentioned earlier at the beginning.
I see Brandon's hand up.
Yeah. I just got one question. I just know, I guess now being in like student involvement outside of like SI, it's just like not many students really like understand what student involvement is and like how impactful it can be. So I was just wondering, I know like clubs brought some visibility, but now that it's moving out, like how will we increase like awareness of student involvement, especially as like campus reopens?
Yeah, so we're really in that forming stage, and you heard very well, I think, from CLCE in terms that asset of our student leaders and students wanting to get plugged in and engaged, to have a home to go to and land at, where they can get engaged with leadership and service, and as clubs and organizations, as they create or sustain their level of engagement with their membership, that CLCE location with student involvement is certainly where we want them to land. Now, in terms of signage, in terms of really we're in that soft phase. We're probably 7 weeks into this and adapting into this change. We still have a little bit of road to go in terms of for students when they return to come back and find where Michael will be or is right now. Student involvement, as you said, it's really this oversight in terms of the partnerships and collaboration of all of these departments, not only internally within those areas, but also more externally with multiple other areas within student living and within student success and beyond. But to answer your question, Brendan, like I said, we're in what I would say this soft rollout of it physically and in the environment of telling students as that group, as that department really starts to think through how do we tell the story? How do we tell this landing space where we're at right now? So.
And Dr. Hyde, if I might add to that, when I think about my experience, and I've moved physically into the CLCE structure and the space, but I'm looking at even the screen tonight, I work with so many of our colleagues within student involvement and student government. It's not just this specific space, this specific office. So as I'm thinking about it in the future, it's really how can we continue to push that cohesion so that we know if somebody runs for student government, that's a student involvement thing. Going to campus activities, that's a student involvement thing. Enjoying their time in the student union, that's a student involvement thing. So I think really continuing to bring us together is going to be at least one of my big pushes as we move forward.
If I could speak to that too, I've been in student involvement for about 16 years now, and I know I am helping ESC, I am helping CLCE, I'm helping all of the different departments that are under student involvement, and getting more and more involved in the student engagement part and helping the ASCWU.
Thanks, Paul.
Awesome, thank you.
Any more questions? I don't see any. So if you guys have any more questions, we can email them and we'll receive an answer later on. Thank you to everyone who presented tonight. We appreciate all of you guys' time. All right, so if I'm not mistaken, we don't have any old business. No old business, all right. So then let's go to the second call of public comments. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Joey, I think I see your hand up.
Yeah. Mine is just a reminder for you all and a thank you for all the work that you all have put in. Did a quick math over here. Just, as of right now, you all have already spent 19 hours and 28 minutes this quarter hearing base funding requests and asking your questions and delving into that. And so I appreciate all the time, and I want to put that in the context of how much time you all have already looked at this. And to thank you all for the time you all are going to spend here in the next week and a half, really is what we're looking at. And so again, after the meeting here shortly, Aubrey's going to send out an email to you all, which is going to have that survey. If you can make sure to take time to go in and look at those, use the deliberation rubrics that were sent out to you all kind of as that guide for how you're going to rank those. Because again, there's those different areas within it that we have the 6 different ones to kind of look at your own justification for why you're putting those on there. But to really take the time to fill those out, because we are going to use that to kind of guide the discussion. And the more time and effort you put into that ahead of time, ideally the less time that we'll all be sitting in a deliberation chatting about it, because you'll have done that when you get the chance there. But again, I appreciate you all the thoughtful questions and things. Again, if you have any additional questions, I know I've already gotten a couple as we've been sitting here tonight for any of the presenters, either tonight or previous, given some of the responses or things, send them to me, because I want to make sure we can get those out pretty quickly so we can have them, and I'll share them before we start deliberation next week. But if you all have questions or things for Lacey, Aubrey, or myself, definitely don't hesitate to ask them in advance, because we want to make sure you all are feeling as prepped and prepared as possible going into deliberations next week. So thank you all, and we're almost at the tail end of this.
And I see Josh's hand up.
Hi, thank you. I often will take the public comment time to selfishly ask some questions that can help me do my job better. And so I thought I'd ask some questions to you students. And if you could just chat if you don't want to talk, but I'd love to hear you in a short period or a short response to know from your perspective, what makes CWU unique among public institutions in the Northwest? So how would you respond to that question of what makes CWU unique?
Go ahead, Bjorn.
Are we doing it in the chat or like here?
Either way, I don't want to take over the rest of this public comment, but I would really love just a few responses as we're wrapping up the meeting tonight.
See you, Greg. For me, I think the big thing is the focus on diversity and community. Like, if I wanted to pay a ton of money and have a bunch of lab classes, I would go to UW. But CWU has that strong, not quite familial, but very community driven, like everybody brings something to the table kind of atmosphere. I'm here because I like the people and I like the climate.
Thanks.
Messina has her hand up, and then we'll go to Aubrey because she had something else to say.
Something that I think about Central that's pretty unique among like Northwest colleges is that it's really accessible for students to like be involved. And even in classes, the class sizes, I've never been in a class that's bigger than like really 30 other people, which might be unique to my major, but it's just incredible that I can go to Central, which has like 15,000 students, and I can still get a really incredibly detailed and really personal education and meet people like professors and have just a really incredible conversations with them, and they know you and they know your face. And even getting involved with like, yeah, the student union or like ACWU is possible just by asking some questions around campus, and then you just kind of get introduced to a bunch of people, which I think is really cool about Central.
Great, thank you so much.
I think, Aubrey, you had something to say too.
Yeah, if students have more input for Josh's question, they can definitely go though, because mine's not related to that.
Okay. I saw Brandon's hand up then.
I know. Oh man, it's kind of hard. I feel like it's just like what Messina said. It was like what I was thinking about saying. I know, like personally, like my story was like I left UW just because I didn't like the feel of those big classes and feeling like a number, especially when it came to like my academic success. So I know like coming here was like an unreal like mid-year, kind of like mid-quarter almost, and like kind of having like more than you expected, I guess, when you had like a tour I know like someone, he was just I guess like the tour guide or whatever, he was just like sent her a text and she was there within 5 minutes to give me a tour. And then like 10 minutes later, like, you know, I guess like the tour guide, you know, texted I guess the dean of the College of Business, so Dr. Stinson, and, you know, within like, you know, a day I was already in the same room as the dean. And it's just like, would have I gotten that at UW? Of course not. You know, would have had the relationships with professors like I had? Probably not. Waiting for office hours that, you know, have lines that span 3 hours, but the office hour is only an hour long. Like you don't really get in there. So, I mean, for me, it was just like an unreal experience, you know, having a professor like send a letter to my parents, just saying like, congratulating me on like my success in a class. It's like, yeah, you don't really get that at many other places. So that alone was pretty cool. And then just knowing like, thinking of myself being in student government at a major college was like, no way. But here, just like doors opened up after door after door, and it kind of led to where I was. So that type of thing definitely I think is unique here versus, you know, other colleges.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
And then Aubrey, what were you going to say?
I just forgot to mention earlier, the deliberation sessions that we have coming up, Frank Jones is going to be setting those up for us because they are going to be in a webinar format instead of in a regular Zoom meeting. So you will each get an individual link from Frank. So you'll want to keep an eye out for that. It should come to your central email, and you'll need that to get into the meeting. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate in the conversation. And then there will be a general link that I will post on the S&A website for anybody who wants to view the meeting, and they'll have the option to kind of participate through the Q&A or the chat, but won't be able to speak at the verbally in the meeting.
All right, thank you, Aubrey. And any other comments? All right. You know what? I would actually like to ask a question for you, Brandon. If I'm not mistaken, primary elections for student government is this weekend, starting this weekend?
Yeah, we got Mikhail here too. We'll be doing in-person tabling if y'all are in Ellensburg around the circ, trying to get people to engage. We'll be active on social media. There's one primary election right now. It's for the Director of Student Life and Facilities. We have 3 running candidates, so definitely find your way over to the ASCW website. Mikhail will probably put the link in. Yep, get a cookie and a sticker, safely packaged. It's very safe, and the sticker, of course, is sanitized as well. But yeah, we'll be doing a little bit of on-campus stuff as well as pushing it through social media. But yeah, it's this weekend. Goes throughout all the weekend. Mikhail does it. It ends Monday morning or at evening. Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Definitely help us with the primary, narrow it down to 2 candidates for the Director of Student Life Facilities.
All right, thank you. And then any other comments? Seeing none, can I entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved.
So moved by Brandon. Any second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Bjorn. And motion passes. All right, have a nice night, everybody.
Good to see you.
Have a great evening and week, all.